We're going to get started pretty soon now, so if you're at a table, you might want to finish up and then come join us up front. And some of you at tables on the side might not be able to see very well, so again, I encourage you to come up and take seats up front here. I think we'll go ahead and get started now. All right, well, welcome. Welcome everybody from across the University of Minnesota system, both those of you who are here physically in the room and those of you who are joining us virtually. Really appreciate everybody taking time out of busy schedules to participate in today's discussions. We're really thrilled to make this a system-wide initiative. So Michael Go, Vice President for Equity and Diversity, would normally have been the one to greet you, but he's off doing VP-like things somewhere, not sure exactly where. So you're stuck with me. I'm Scott Lanyon, Vice Provost and Dean of Graduate Education. And on his behalf, I'd like to thank all the sponsors for today's event, School of Nursing, School of Public Health, School of Dentistry, and of course the Office of Equity and Diversity. I'd also like to acknowledge that the University of Minnesota is built within the traditional homelands of the Dakota people. On his behalf, or what I'd like to say is, it's important to acknowledge the peoples on whose land we live, learn, and work. It's also critical that we acknowledge our elders and those who came before us. So we're here today for this third diversity data deep dive because we share a commitment to increasing diversity and equity across the University of Minnesota system, and because we recognize that having and sharing data play an important role in those efforts. Several things became very clear in our first two deep dives. As a university system, we have a lot of data. We have a lot of data, but it's not very well integrated on the one hand. It's pretty scattered. And maybe equally important, everyone's so busy, our plates are so full that we don't necessarily make analyzing that data and sharing it, interpreting it a priority. So it's generally underutilized. So the hope for sessions like this today is that we'll begin to change that we'll make sure that not only that we have a lot of data, but that it's the right data and it's collected in a way that really helps us to answer our most pressing questions. And that we'll work together to integrate that information, and very importantly, that we make it a priority to analyze this data in a timely fashion and communicate our findings to inform campus leaders. So there are two additional points I'd really like to make and have you think about over the course of today. This effort isn't just important for the University of Minnesota system. I really do think that we're in a position to establish this as a best practice for higher education. And I think that University of Minnesota is already leading in this area, and that we can continue to do that and can really demonstrate how to use data effectively in order to advance our mission and our goals with equity and diversity. Second, as you may have heard, we're in a leadership transition at this university, and we have a presidential search underway. I think the better job we do in collecting, integrating, analyzing, and interpreting data about the diversity, the more likely it is that we can help establish diversity as a priority for the next administration, and to make it one of the highest priorities, if not the priority, for the University of Minnesota going forward. So thanks very much for taking time out of your schedule. Let's have a productive day.
Thank you, Scott. I'm Virajita Singh, Assistant Vice Provost in the Office for Equity and Diversity, and I'm just going to give you an overview today. Welcome. Also, I wanted to convey that Michael Goh, Vice President of Equity and Diversity, has also conveyed his welcome in addition to Scott. So the day's plan is to have panel presentations. So our first panel will focus on the system. It's in this room, Mississippi room. We will have a short break at 10 o'clock, and during the break, we encourage you to consider mentioning one or two takeaways on some Post-its that are on the piano there to your left, and put it on the flip chart paper, so it's a Post-it activity. After that, we'll follow with the second panel, which is about diversity, data, and innovation at 10:15. Followed by lunch break, and lunch will be served in the annex here. As part of the lunch break, we are going to do a half-an-hour activity. It's called the Dear Data Postcard Workshop, and that will happen in room 303. That's right across the hall from here, and it'll start at 12:15. After that, the third session is breakout sessions, which will not be in this room. It will be in rooms 303 that I just mentioned across, and then down the hall, rooms 325 and 326. After the breakout sessions, there'll be a short break again here with snacks again in the annex, and the last panel session will be back in the Mississippi room. Hope that's not too confusing, and hope the schedule will help you. Please feel free to ask any questions to myself, Emily Hyams, and others in the room. With that, I'm going to turn to the first panel and start with the first presenter, who's Melissa Bert from Institutional Effectiveness, University of Minnesota Morris. Thank you.
Not sure. Oh, look at that. I thought, is it just going to be magically appearing? I'm sorry? Ah, okay, good to know. So thanks for being here this morning online, as I usually am, and in person. So as was noted, I'm from the University of Minnesota Morris, and so I'm just going to talk briefly today about some of the ways that we've used data to try and understand our student population at UMM. And I'm going to try and see what happens here. So in terms of history and background, you may not know that the Morris campus was established in 1960. And it's located about 2.5 hours from the Twin Cities campus in a town of about 5,000 people, including the students. We're an undergraduate residential public liberal arts college, and our enrollment this past fall, or this fall, was just over 1,500 students. And you can see some of the information there. Our average ACT has been about 25 for the last number of decades. Before the campus, the University of Minnesota Morris campus was established, we were part of the West Central School of Agriculture, and prior to that, some of you may know that we were an American Indian boarding school, and as a part of the agreement with the state of Minnesota, when they passed the land to the state of Minnesota, it was agreed that we would, as you can see here, at all times, American Indian students would be admitted to whatever school existed on that land free of charge of tuition. So we have an American Indian tuition waiver for students on campus, which impacts our diversity, which I'll talk about a little bit here. In terms of geography, a lot of people don't know that. They think that most of our students come from rural Minnesota, but every part of the map here that's colored indicates that there is a student or more that came from that county. So as you can see, we have about a third of our students coming from the Twin Cities and metro area, and about 40% of students from greater Minnesota, and an increasing number of international students with a number of states and countries represented. So for the last number of years, we've had an increase in our percentage of students of color and a slight decline in our overall headcount. But as I noted before, if you look at the top row, in 2012 we had about 280 American Indian students, and this past year 312, so that percentage has increased and really contributed to our overall increase in our percentage of students of color. this is all really familiar to me, so it's usually I roll right through it because I've seen these charts a number of times. In terms of our first-year students that entered this fall, we have a higher percentage of female students than male, and we have about a third Pell recipients and about a third first-generation college students. So we have socioeconomic diversity and racial and ethnic diversity as is indicated below. And I'm curious about how some of the other campuses gather information about sexual orientation, gender identity, and religious background. We utilize our NESI results, which NESI we administer, I see some nodding, we administer every 2 years and SERP every 3 years. And so in terms of sexual orientation, from NESI, about a quarter of our students identify as heterosexual, and then around 10% bisexual, and then a small percentage of students identify as gay, lesbian, queer, questioning, or another sexual orientation. And in terms of gender identity, don't have a ton of information about that, but from NESI, we are able to, obviously it's self-reported data, but students, about a third of our students identify as male, about 2/3 of our students identify as female, and then a very small percentage identify 2 and 3% as another gender identity. And so it's something that is increasingly interesting and important to us in order to be able to serve these students, but it's self-reported data that's often difficult to collect. In terms of SERP data, religious background is another area of diversity where we have an interest. We have about an 88% response rate for our first-year students that took SERP in 2016, and about half indicate that they have some religious background, and about a quarter indicate no religious affiliation. So the way that we've used data on campus, really, in terms of diversity-related initiatives, is really focused on applying for grants, federal grants. And so over the last number of years, we've been able to receive 3 federal grants. As you can see here, our TRIO Student Support Services project was established in 2015. And then we also received funding for a Native American Student Success Program through the Native American Serving Non-Tribal Institutions aspect of the Title III program. And most recently, we received another TRIO grant, this one for the McNair Program. And these serve students from a variety of backgrounds, and I was part of the writing group for the McNair project, so if you have any questions about that, I can definitely answer some about that project. So the way that we use data to try and make the argument for our NAS program was to look into the experience of our Native American students on campus. And so what we noticed is that our Native American students had fewer credits at entry. They had an increased likelihood of being placed into algebra courses, fundamentals of writing courses, some of our more entry-level courses in key areas, and had indicated more significant personal challenges in their lives at the time of application. And so when we looked at the data, what we saw is that there was a gap in a variety of areas for those students that were actually on our campus. And you can see those here. They had lower first-year retention rates, lower third to fourth-year retention rates, much lower 4-year graduation rates, and 6-year graduation rates as well. And so what we have done with the program is implemented a variety of components that have really impacted not only the Native American students on campus, but the campus as a whole, especially as we continue to recognize our role in our history with Native American students. So here's just a long list, but in some ways a brief list of all of the components. The Elders in Residence program has been really popular, and also our workshop on financial aid literacy. It's really helped students understand where they are in their borrowing, especially, and they have been able to make some plans based on that. And this is an image of at graduation, we have a ceremony where students receive these blankets, and it's a pretty powerful ceremony that is kind of the highlight of the end of the year. And so in terms of the McNair program, for that we looked back at our students that had graduated and tried to figure out, well, who graduated and actually got a PhD. And as you can see, we've had in the last 3 decades about 250 recipients of PhDs and EdDs, and only 5 of those identified as American Indian, Black, or Hispanic. So that's a significant gap. And as you can see, it took them all a number of years to receive those degrees. And so that was one of our strongest arguments for why we needed this program on our campus. And you can also see some of the challenges facing these students compared to traditionally college-bound students at entry. So lower ACT math scores, lower ACT English scores, less credits at entry, and more likely to drop out. That's based on every year we administer the Ruffalo Noel Levitt's college student inventory, and so essentially it's a construct that indicates whether or not students are more or less likely to drop out. So the McNair program includes faculty mentors, a number of activities for students focused on research. There's a summer research component. I just participated in some graduate school interviews, which were fun to put on the hat and act that way. So it's a growing program. It's very new on our campus, and one of the things that we're working on is trying to educate students earlier on about the availability of these programs and get them excited about research early on. And we have a quality initiative that I'm leading that's focused on the first year experience, and one of those arms is focused on high impact practices, which includes undergraduate research. And so what we're hoping is to be able to connect the information that we're providing to first year students about the opportunities beyond their first year and kind of help them dip their toe into undergraduate research, with the idea of some of them being able to move into the McNair program eventually. And I don't think you can ask me questions yet, but but thank you for listening. Yeah. Oh, okay. Actually, I can take questions. Any online as well. Yes.
The summer research that the McNair students do, is that entirely in Morris, or do they ever come here to the U, this campus of the U, to do that in labs here?
Right. So it varies. It depends on, they can take advantage of it however they want to. The majority of students have participated in Morris, but we also, we have a handful that have connected with faculty here. And as it grows, I envision that it'll be across the University of Minnesota system campuses. Yeah.
Do you have any information about why Native Americans are dropping out? I mean, I can see a lot of data that they are, but do you have any other kind of qualitative data that tells you why?
And with us, we're in a unique situation because of the tuition waiver, and so that presents its own interesting situation because of ways that you can imagine. What we've seen a lot of is and I think this is consistent across campuses, is that it's often family obligations. It's, I can think of one student that was a part of the NAS program that wanted to become an electrical contractor, and that wasn't going to be found at a liberal arts college. So what I should note about the NAS program is that we have had higher retention rates for students that are participating in this program. And a lot of it is because of and what they've said is it's because of the peer mentors that we have and that connection to staff who identify as Native American or American Indian. And so it's also developing that community for them. Now, it's not for all students. I mean, you have a variety of we have a variety of students who, some of whom actually lived on a reservation, some of who never have been on one, and so you have to kind of consider that as well. But it's, for us, where we've been successful with these students is when they have felt connected to a smaller community within the larger institution. Does that completely, you're nodding, so I think that answers your question, but yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. My question is, I'm glad you mentioned that the students need to connect with the staff that you're providing in order for the support of these programs. Right. So have you started initiatives that speak to helping increase the staff? Thank you.
The staff what? So the staff diversity?
Yes, exactly.
So, and I should note that we have about 12% of our faculty are student of color, so they are faculty of color, so we don't have a dramatic, we don't have a very diverse staff and faculty population. So I'm one of the senior administrators on campus, and it's something that we have a fair amount of discussion about. It's a difficult proposition trying to recruit diverse people to a town in rural Minnesota. I will say that in a small way, we've tried to make some efforts in terms of doing recruitment. There are, and I can't think of the exact wording, but essentially graduate students that are eventually going to be looking for jobs who are from diverse backgrounds gather together at various places, and so we've been reaching out in that way. We also have a pre-doctoral program connected to the NAS grant, and that's brought in some more diverse faculty, or soon-to-be faculty. And we also have a number of people who are teaching Native American languages, and that also is another way that we're connecting to folks. But in terms of specific initiatives, the specific one that I mentioned is the only one that we've implemented. And if anybody has any suggestions, especially given our location, that would be very helpful. It's a way that I could learn.
Today's conference is really about thinking in innovative ways. So I wanted to do a shout out to Morris for your willingness to partner with the School of Nursing here, in that that's a very successful program for students who might not come to the U for our baccalaureate program, but get excellent preparation at UM Morris and get well supported and learn scholarship and academic skills, and then come here for graduate school. So I hope as you're talking to people today, you begin to think about those partnerships, because you folks are fabulous.
Well, thank you. And that is something that we're really interested in, especially with our relatively new chancellor. We hear that people appreciate, especially at the graduate level, the University of Minnesota Morris graduates. So there are connections that we're definitely interested in. Oh, there's one in the back. Last question.
I'm just curious about how much the community of Morris is connected to the campus. I started in Morris in 1991 and left after 2 years. I was a North Dakota student, but I'm always curious to know how much it's grown, because when we think about students of color and the needs that they have in, as far as the community is concerned, does Morris or can Morris provide that stuff now?
I think your experience in 1991 was probably similar to your experience as it would be in 2018, to be honest. It's not a very diverse community. You know the unique, you know what it's like. But it's a lot of where, and it's a reason why we've had to be so intentional on the college campus, is because a lot of those needs aren't going to be able to be met in the immediate city surrounding our campus. And so I think one of the reasons why we've been able to be a little bit more successful with some of our students of color is because we've had a key small group, but a key group of staff that are really committed to the students that are on our campus, that are willing to invest in them, that are mentors to them, and that are supporting them. But it's a challenge not just for students of color, but for a wide range of students of various backgrounds, and it's something that we have a close connection with members of the community, but it takes time to make that change. Thank you.
I'm going to have to pull up the slides here. So our next speaker is Lorna Hollowell. She's the Diversity and Multicultural Programs Director at the University of Minnesota. Oh, is it on a timer? I don't have one, no. Okay, so I guess I have to remember where the timer setting is. Anybody know where timer settings are usually? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So,
Feel free to come up.
so we're gonna here to set up show
Okay.
and use
Zero.
time is present, so just go manually,
Okay, perfect.
and then just go okay. That should be okay.
Thank you so
Hopefully
much. Ready? Come on up. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. I am Lorna Hollowell, the Director of Diversity and Multicultural Programs from the University of Minnesota in Crookston. I am so happy to be here on this morning, and thank you, Rajada, and all of you who have coordinated and invited me to be a part of this. And to my colleague, Lacey, who is here. I did not expect anyone from Crookston to be here, but I appreciate you being here, and a shout out to my Golden Eagle family. So, UMC is breaking fertile ground to cultivate diversity, equity, and inclusion to increase representational diversity. So, when I first arrived in Crookston 7 winters ago, and that's how I measure, one of the first things that I noticed is the soil is so beautiful. It is black, it is rich. As I travel down Highway 2, I just always am amazed by how beautiful, believe it or not, the soil is to me. And because of that soil, it provides a bounty of fresh vegetables. And I will often gather my vegetables. People are so generous, they will bring vegetables to the college, to my church in Grand Forks. Sometimes I will visit the farmer's market, and I will put my vegetables on the counter, and I'm so proud. And I have a son who is paleo, so I take a picture and I send him saying, Marcus, look at all of my good stuff. So from the good stuff, I'm able to make good stuff, so I've learned to make wonderful homemade vegetable beef soup. And this is actually one of my wonderful zucchini muffins. So I have learned to use all of these wonderful produce in a wonderful way. And then in the corner there, that is my sunflower choir. Often when I am traveling to Grand Forks and I'm on Highway 2, the sunflowers are just standing up like a choir or an army. And every year it's the same thing, but I always have to get out of my car and take a picture at my beautiful sunflower choir. So, at the University of Minnesota Crookston, we often say that you cannot have excellence without diversity. And Michael Goh said it on yesterday at the diversity breakfast. I think he said that in order to have an excellent university, that you have to have a diverse university. So here I included this writing. We need diversity in discipline, intellectual outlook, cognitive style, and personality to offer our students the breadth of ideas that constitutes a dynamic intellectual community. So, since about 2014-15, the University of Minnesota Crookston has been engaged in a conversation around the importance of strategic diversity planning and campus-wide initiatives to increase, to promote cultural competency, diversity, inclusion, and excellence. So this year, we were charged by our chancellor from our strategic planning team to coordinate a committee to begin to formally explore diversity, equity, and inclusion. So from that came our strategic task force for excellence in diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we were charged with 3 strategic goal areas, and we are to come up with 3 SMART goals by the end of this academic year. So the 3 are anti-bias action plan and campus climate. Number 2, which is the one that I'm going to focus on and address today, is representational diversity and internal engagement. And 3, infusing diversity into curriculum, co-curricular education, and professional development. So Michael Goh and his team visited our campus about maybe 6 weeks ago, and these goals are right in line with the Office of Equity and Diversity. So now I'm going to present some data, and I want to give a shout out to Sue Erickson from the Crookston campus. She is the Director of Institutional Effectiveness, and I'm sure you must know her, Melissa, because you clapped. So Sue, if you're out there, you have 1 fan and 2 in me. So I will say that I am not a data person. I am the Director of Diversity. Our new Vice Chancellor of Academic and Student Affairs has told us, Dr. John Hoffman has told us that we are educators. We are student affairs educators. So data is not my strong suit, but nevertheless, want to start with the student demographics. And so as we look at the data here, and I'm going to follow along, these numbers depict our brick and mortar numbers. So as you can see here, the N is pretty small. We are 73% dominant culture, white students. If we look at our black students, which is the largest minority group that we have, and that would be African and African American. I serve as the advisor for the Black Student Association, and about 98% of that group are African students. So it's a very interesting dynamic at the Crookston campus. 7% there. Our international population is 8%, Hispanic 4%, or Latinx, American Indian 3%, Asian 2%, and then those that did not disclose are at 2%, and then Hawaiian, it says 0, but I do know that we have 1 Hawaiian student, and that is the benefit of a small campus. You know who's here and you know who's there. When we look at our faculty diversity, those numbers are small there again. I will be focusing on student diversity representation, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what our campus is looking like. And I'm right here. For our staff diversity, as again, excuse me, I'm sorry, that was faculty. I'm sorry, I'm right here. I knew that it was. I'm right here, excuse me. This is our staff diversity. So as you can see, we do have a lot of opportunity for growth. The diversity on our campus is definitely in our student ranks, but we are doing some work around increasing our faculty diversity, especially. We've been providing some implicit bias training for our search committees. So about 4 years ago, we started this training and we thought it was going to only be one time. And so any individual that served on a search committee for a new faculty had to attend this training. Well, we are 4 years later, and that training is still being requested. And so certainly we're excited about that. But now I've been saying we've got to get that over to the staff side of the house, where our numbers are smaller as far as diverse representation. But these are the individuals, our staff in our service areas. They are the ones that have face time with our diverse students, and sometimes that's where we're facing the challenges. So certainly we have some work to do on the staff side of the house. So, Latinx. Representation is the area that we are currently focusing on. This is where we see the opportunity for growth and to increase the diversity on our campus. So as you see there, remember I'm not a data person, but I can read numbers. If we look at the numbers for Minnesota, we see that the data, and this is census data from 2015, 284,000. And if we look at Polk County, which is our area, 1,928. And then all of these others are surrounding communities that are feeder areas into Crookston. Those provide a wonderful opportunity to increase our diversity if we can come up with strategies to funnel those, to build a bridge to our campus. On the other side there, you'll see the data shows the estimates of Latinx students by age. And if you look at those first 3 rows, I would say ages 10 to 14, there's about 900 students there. As the years proceed, there's an opportunity for us to recruit those students. So how did we begin to break ground? When I first arrived at the Crookston campus and I inquired about diversity in Crookston, I was informed that there were about 325 Latinx families in our community. So in 2017, I attended the the Ruffalo Noel Levitz Symposium on Diverse Student Retention. I think that was the gist of the title. And one of the workshops that I attended spoke specifically to Latinx student recruitment. And so from my notes, I just developed this screen and this model, and it just talks about the importance, if you will, of building a network, a web of campus, community, secondary, community partners, alum, all of these entities coming together to provide support. And so it talks a lot about collaboration between the stakeholders, certainly the community, the schools, the district, the university, to ensure Latino student success, and the importance of family engagement and dreamer support. And some of the things that were mentioned in that, of course, offering information that is either bilingual or Spanish, speaking to the families about just simply moving on campus, what types of services are provided for undocumented students, financial aid information. So this is how we began to break the ground formally. And I had been speaking to the powers that be about the importance of recruiting Latinx students, but it was after this, after attending this conference and presenting this information to our Strategic Enrollment Management Committee in October, that they said, go for it. They gave a charge to finally to mobilize a committee. But some of the data that was presented there that was surprising to me, that it said that in July of 2014, there were 55 million Spanish speakers, and that by 2060, that is projected that there would be 199 million Spanish-speaking households in America, or 28%. And so certainly, what an opportunity. And as we look at the data from our area, from our community, we see that there is a great opportunity. So we immobilized the Strategic Enrollment Management Committee, Latinx Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee, and I just call it Latinx R&R. And so the charge that we were given, and I'm trying to be Vanna, on the screen and by hand to inventory and assess current UMC resources that support Latinx students, identify what additional resources are needed to achieve a sustainable level to better recruit and retain and support Latinx students, evaluate how we could target local Latinx population to engage them to consider attending UMC, and then again by the academic year that we were to present to our chancellor and to this SCMC body, our administration, a proposal and tell them what we felt like that it would take strategically to do this work well. So we did submit that proposal, and we are yet waiting for the funding to be approved because of enrollment and budgetary concerns. So I just wanted to give you an idea of the process that we followed. It was a lot of conversations, a literature review, listening sessions, more conversations in that proposal. And so we did a literature review, and one of the sources was the history of Latino experience in the Morris area. What a wonderful source for us. We created a repository of literature, of data and reports, and then we began to engage in a series of listening sections. And they began on campus. Our Latinx Recruitment and Retention Subcommittee has at least 5 alums, one of which is our mayor. He is very active, and he's also a member of our strategic task force for diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we had these listening sessions, and we actually started at the University of Minnesota Morris. We called and we talked to Tammy, who is new there, and actually, I don't know if Tammy's in the house, but it was Tammy's like 3rd day of employment in the position. And so we were so happy to be able to engage, and she gave us a lot of background, a lot of history that she was knowledgeable of, and also our Duluth campus, and then on-campus populations, our current students. We talked to prospective students from the high school, our community partners, business owners, and we also worked with admissions to create some Spanish bilingual admissions information, and then we began to form alliances with our community partners, including there is a committee on campus to start a small business administration to bring that back to Crookston. Of course, that is the desire and the dream of Chancellor Mary Holzclaw. And so we even partnered with them because I felt like we are doing some of the same work, so why not co-engage? Why not have these meetings and invite our community partners, you know, to the campus on the same day? Instead of 3 or 4 different meetings, why not collaborate our efforts? So some of the things that we learned, we talked about, of course, bilingual support, which I'd learned from Ruffalo and Noel Levitz, the family engagement, building collaboration and trust. We learned that we needed to have an active student organization, which we do have, the League of United Latinos. It's up and down as student organizations will be. Again, the materials in Spanish, and then academic programs focusing on Spanish and Latinx culture. I just wanted to, there's a lot of narrative there, but pretty much on the side there, some of the same points that I've talked about. I think it's all been covered. One of the key areas, the second to the last bullet, in conversation with the Latinx students from the high school who are on campus each summer for a program called Fresh Voices in Progress. It is a photography camp, and they have been on campus for about 20 years. Every summer they're on our campus, and so we wanted to tap into them. So we had a listening session with them and their leaders specifically. We invited them to campus, and the one thing they told us that was so important and we found so gratifying is that they said that they felt comfortable and they felt safe on our campus. And some of them are thinking about attending UMC because of their familial relationships, and one set of students said, we've been best friends since the 2nd grade, and we're considering coming to UMC and being roommates. So what we did and what we're doing, again, we partnered with the Bremer Small Business Grant. There is a robotics camp held on campus every year. I helped to direct it one year, and I noticed that it was pretty much the hospital, the clinic, and UMC families, students, children who were attending. And so most of them were probably not first generation. They probably didn't have socioeconomic challenges, was not much diversity. And so we began to talk about how can we get students to attend this camp. One of the faculty members on our committee wrote a check out of her pocket. And so we were able to ensure that 4 Latinx students were able to attend the camp this summer. Partnering with Fresh Voices, I had an exhibit for them in September in observance of Hispanic Latino Heritage Month, other activities on campus. There was a wonderful Latino-Mexican display in our bookstore bookcase and display case, and it was only supposed to be up for maybe 2 weeks, and every day there were so many compliments that I called, and I just reserved the entire month and just ran it right into Dia de las Muertas. So very successful, invited the community in for a day full of activities, and then as we move forward, we are going to increase those, the quantity of those robotic scholarships, continue to partner with Fresh Voices Summer Camp, but we are going to go into the camp and partner with them to offer some academic and some recruitment activities. Also, I initiated a collaborative partnership with admissions around increasing our representational diversity and certainly speaking to this Latinx recruitment and retention. And then some of you may have heard of the We Are Water exhibit that is here. It's on your campus. Well, it will be in Crookston in February, so there will be an opportunity for Fresh Voices to host an event. What we are doing now while we're waiting for that funding to be approved, we've applied for the Faculty Research Engagement Funds. Some funds were sent down from here at the Twin Cities to Crookston, and so we've written a proposal for that. It is not going to get us green dollars into our coffers to help us do the work that we propose to do, but the money will help us to get a grant writer who will identify grants and write grants for us to get funding. We're also looking at other funding sources, and then some low-hanging initiatives, again with admissions. We have a first-year experience course that will be launched this fall, coming in fall 2019, collaborating with the high school. So we're looking at how can we tap into and connect with other initiatives. So I would say that the harvest is ripe for Crookston. So many opportunities, so many sources. We're very, very excited about the future. We know that there are socioeconomic challenges, there are political challenges, there are so many challenges out there, but I'm very, very encouraged and I'm looking forward to this work. Special thanks to our chancellor, our vice chancellor, to my supervisor, Lisa Samuelson, the associate vice chancellor of student affairs. Again, Sue Erickson, thank you for the data. Our SCMC, Dr. Michael Go, Virajita, and Tammy from the Morris campus, and Susanna Woodward. She was not here today, but she also provided us a listening session as well, and I think that's it. These are just some of the sources, and thank you.
I'm just going to make a quick announcement to our online viewers. In case you have questions, we haven't received any questions yet. The link is z.umn.edu/DDDD, all caps, 3_questions. So it's also on the DDDD webpage that was sent out. So if there are any questions, we'd welcome them. But in the meantime, other questions for Lorna?
Yes, Melissa? Oh, you need a mic.
So this was in one of your last slides. I'm curious about your first year experience diversity inclusion track. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I wish that I could. I have not been invited into those meetings, although I've requested. They are laying the groundwork, and I'm thinking in the next few months I should be invited to the table, but certainly want to look at various ethnicities. We want to look at race. We want to look at race and class and religion, and certainly cultural competency. We've actually implemented using the IDI on our campus, and so we've administered it to our strategic planning committee, about 50 individuals, and so it's our goal to begin to branch out and to administer that in other areas. So stay tuned. I'm yet waiting to see what that's going to look like and to be invited to the table for those conversations. Someone else? Anne, we have one here.
Thank you. Hi, you mentioned some work that you were doing in the admissions area. Have you done any work working with the admissions staff, doing something like the bias workshop with them? So when you have a faculty search, there are sometimes bias workshops for faculty searches, but are there any similar workshops for admissions staff?
In the future, for the entire staff side of the house. Some of the work that I'm doing with admissions is talking about our PR, the importance of the messages that we're saying. We want to be inclusive and representative. Also providing them with many, many ideas. I had a meeting with them about 2 weeks ago, and I asked them, these are some of the questions that I asked. I'm out-of-the-box thinker. I said, are we recruiting siblings out of the same household of students who are here? And I said, are we recruiting families? Why? Because we are an online campus. I think 49% of our population is online. So are we recruiting families? Why not recruit the parents? They can sit at home and be students while their students are attending brick and mortar. We talk about bringing groups to campus, and they said, well, Lorna, we don't have a travel budget like that. The buses are expensive. I said, but there are groups such as Upward Bound, Educational Talent Search, College Possible, Gear Up. They have budgets for travel. So contact them, offer yourself as a resource, invite them to come to Crookston for their visits. They pay the travel. We'll feed them and give them some gear and some stuff, but we can bring them to our campus and use their travel dollars. And I said, by the way, for MEA week, have you thought about asking the schools to schedule and these groups to schedule their visits during MEA week and align? And so I was just giving them all of these various ideas, and I offered myself as a resource. So in the past, I've attended MNAC, the Minnesota Admissions Counselors of Color. I've went on behalf of UMC, the State College Fair, just wherever I could go and be a resource and a partner with them.
Thank you, Lorna. Over here. I know I actually have a question. I just want to say thank you. But my question, wait a second. My question is this. Have you partnered with I'm just envisioning if I were going to go to college there umpteen years ago and going there with my parents, Mexican immigrants. If they went into Crookston, would they feel that that was a place that their daughter could get what she needed from that community? And I haven't been there, but as I spoke to you earlier, I plan to be there very soon to visit. But I think that's a big thing, to partner with the commerce there and to tell them this is an opportunity for you. Work with the banks, offer loans to these communities so that they can start their businesses. You know, it's one thing to call it a laundromat, it's another to call it a lavanderia. You know, it's a panaderia, and it's a bakery still that sells everything the same. But as someone coming to visit, that says that's a welcoming place for my child to stay and spend the next 4 years. So the other thing that, just listening to you, to partner with our groups here, can those students once a year come visit this campus and sit in classes here? I think that would be huge for parents who are based in the Twin Cities to know their child is being educated at one of our sister schools, but that for 1 week they get to visit our campus to come see what the Twin Cities is like and stay home for a week. So I don't know, there's so many possibilities here to make this just
so I would say that students would feel comfortable, their families would feel comfortable on our campus. I have to be honest, sometimes when students leave the island and go into our community, there can be a challenge there, but I have found the community to be very welcoming. We are partnering. We have El Gorditos restaurant and store in the community. We have some other Latinx family-owned businesses, certainly forming collaborative relationships with those businesses. Also with the chamber, I serve on the chamber board. So again, connecting the chamber with those businesses. So again, it's very, very fertile ground. There are a lot of gaps, a lot of deficiencies in Crookston, but also a lot of good stuff happening there. And I'm very, very encouraged. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorna. Before we transition, I also wanted to make a mention of Rebecca Moss, who is our in-house sketch note visualizer for the morning. And some of you may have noticed the screen here. So we will actually have those notes on the website at the end. So thank you, Rebecca. Our next speaker is Ramiro Alvarez from the University of Minnesota, Rochester. He's a Health Corps and Student Access Coordinator, correct? Welcome. Do an important thing here. Here you go.
So first off, I apologize for not having pictures of delicious food in my first slide. Lorna, did you bring zucchini muffins for everybody? No? Okay. I didn't think so, but okay. So my name is Ramiro Alvarez. I am from the University of Minnesota in Rochester. I serve as the Health Corps and Access Student Services Coordinator, which means that I work with primarily underrepresented students. So just as a caveat, I am about to complete my 4th month at UMR. So as you can see, they've thrown me into the deep end right away. And then also, I'm actually new to the U of M system. So I've never worked in the University of Minnesota system. So the majority of my time I've spent in MnSCU or MnState now. So I've had to unlearn and relearn a lot of things in the last 4 months. And with that said, there may be things that I don't have answers to. I will try to answer your questions to the best of my abilities, but if I cannot, I don't want to overstate or understate anything that you may have questions about, so I will have to get back to you with that information, okay? All right, so one of the things that I wanted to mention, this is actually really refreshing. I've never gone to anything that is similar to this. That includes 2 of my passions as a professional in higher ed, working with data and with diversity, which is, this is very unique. So it's a great thing, and I hope that we continue that conversation, not just on a yearly or even on a semester basis, but that we continue the conversation as the weeks and months go on, and we plan for the next year. But thank you for having me. Some of the things that we'll cover today, one of the things that I've heard a lot about, or some of the comments that I've heard just this morning is, oh, you're from Rochester, great. I'm looking forward to hear more about what Rochester has to offer, because I don't think a lot of folks know that much about Rochester. So I'm going to cover a little bit of that. Demographic data, just briefly. I know we're pressed for time. Campus climate findings, and then what I really want to focus on is some of the initiatives and programming that we have. Because we do a lot of great things at UMR. So just as an overview, founded in 2006, first graduating class was only 5 years ago, okay? We specialize in undergraduate health sciences, so we have 2 majors, so Bachelor of Science in Health Sciences and Bachelor of Science in Health Professions. Okay, so this track here, you will be focusing primarily, it's more of a pre-professional track, as opposed to the health professions where you're going to radiography, echocardiology, respiratory, and sonography. So as you can see, this is a very campus that is focused on students that want to go into the medical field. Okay. Also, 2018-2019 enrollment, 756, so we are a relatively small campus. 620 of which are undergraduate students, 136 are graduate. The average incoming high school GPA is 3.6, average ACT score 24, average class size is 19, 11-to-1 teacher to student or faculty to student ratio, which is pretty huge. And this is another one here, 97% of our students get some form of aid. And the only reason why I mention this is because this actually dictates a lot of what we do. We understand our student population very well. There are some challenges when it comes to having a small campus, but I think there are some advantages as well. We are able to make quick and lasting changes as they come up. So it's not like you have to get a lot of folks in the room to make something happen, I can literally walk across the hallway and have the chancellor's ear if I have a pressing question or if I have a suggestion or anything like that. And so that's very refreshing as well. So here are our grounding values, and I'm not going to read all of them, but I will point out this one here, diversity and inclusiveness. We value the range of human differences and the active pursuit of involvement of varied perspectives. And that is actually something that we really strive to do as a staff and faculty, and especially our administrators as well. We try to allow a space and a venue and a platform for students to be able to express whatever views they have. And we include faculty and staff to be a part of that. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we move on. So points of pride. 91% of our spring graduates completed their degree in 4 years or less. Okay, so that is pretty huge. That's why I put it first. 53% plan to continue their education in graduate or professional school. And I would say that from the students that I've met with, especially starting this summer, I would say pretty much all of them have aspirations to go into graduate school or into to medical school or professional school. 47% are employed in a health-related context. 100% of our health profession students are employed in their fields. So as you can see, when it comes to recruitment and access, that's a huge selling point. Students really want to know that the degree that I'm getting, is it going to get me to where I want to go? And sometimes, unfortunately, that is not necessarily the case. So this is the demographics of our incoming class this last year. So as you can see, it's about 2/3 dominant culture or white students. And I know that it's hard to read down here. Our largest diverse group is our Asian students, and they're really active on campus. So, but you can kind of see the breakdown. I also wanted to point out that 37.1% are first generation, and this is overall enrollment, not just our incoming class. 31.7% are students of color, and then these are some of the languages that are spoken that are first languages, and then some religious preferences as well. So as you can see, although the numbers may be small, we do have representation from a huge swath of our society. And I think Rochester is a place that kind of not just supports it, but encourages it, and it's something that is representative of our community as well, not just at UMR. By gender, so this is our incoming class again for this fall. It's predominantly female students. So yeah, and I see a lot of nods and smiles and yeah. Campus climate findings. Here are some of the things that I wanted to point out. Agree and strongly agree. So overwhelmingly, students agree and strongly agree that a diverse student body at UMR enhances the educational experience of all students. Again, agree and strongly agree that diverse views and perspectives in courses will benefit the university's academic reputation. And this is coming from students. This is the responses we got from students. Again, agree and strongly agree that diverse faculty and staff enhances the educational experience of all students. So there's buy-in there. I think that's the key. It's not just faculty, staff, and administrators kind of pushing these initiatives. There's buy-in from the student body as well. And these are the kind of the things that I wanted to highlight today. So using those campus climate findings, we are enhancing some of our programming initiatives across campus. One of the biggest things that we do is the living learning communities. So these are the 4 that we have. So ROC is recovery on campus, so students who want to transition from transition into a university and continue to promote that students that are in recovery and support and have some support for them. healthy living as well, students who want to promote a healthy lifestyle. The global connections, so intercultural competence is what they promote. Intercultural competence, global citizenship, and a commitment to solving global health challenges. And these include international students, but also students who want to be more of a global citizen. And then our Health Corps, which is the program that I coordinate, and that is a community of respect and empowerment. Right now this is our third cohort, so it's relatively young still, but it's the third cohort. We have 63 current students in that program. Not only do they get programming and a lot of opportunities, but they also have some financial support. And as the cohorts are going, obviously, some of the funding dollars are kind of flexed in and out depending on the funding that's available. But there is a funding source there. But all these living learning communities go through a summer bridge. So an early introduction to the campus, to the UMR community. These students are actually conducting research 2 weeks before school starts. So we set a pretty high bar when it comes to these living learning communities, and they've stepped up every single time. So I think that lends to the support of not just our staff that runs the programs, but also our faculty that are available to answer questions and to kind of mentor them as they move along. So the other kind of thing, and this is something that I saw a lot of eyes kind of widen up as I was mentioning earlier today, is that we also use the IDI. All of our health science students take it 3 times while they're at UMR. So they take it their first year, and then they take it their third year, their junior year, and senior year. And the reasoning is that we want to see the progression from first year to third, and then their final year is to help them kind of assess where exactly they are as they head into professional school or graduate school or into their profession. We also have 30 plus. The last time I checked, I think it was 38, but I didn't want to give you a definite number because I know we've had some staff and faculty leave. So 30 plus qualified administrators, and that is across UMR. It's not just faculty, it's not just staff, it's administrators, it's IT folks, it's people from the library, success coaches. I'm a qualified administrator, and so we try to use all of our resources that we can in order to be able to debrief some of these students and encourage them and push them towards intercultural competency. Another thing that we do is diversity dialogues, and this is something that we take all sorts of topics and we try to keep it as current as possible. So for example, I was actually, I think the start of the NFL seasons had just started, and a lot of talk was going on with the protest and patriotism and what that means, and who owns this space, when are you allowed to protest, rights and all those kind of things. So I hosted the first diversity dialogue this semester, and it was around Colin Kaepernick and the silent protests. And so we bring faculty, staff, and students to come and discuss some of these really tough issues that sometimes you don't have an opportunity to do so in a classroom, or even just sitting down eating lunch with someone. And so we provide that platform for students to give their perspective, faculty to give their perspective, and we have representation of every single opinion that you can think of. The important thing is to provide a space where people feel safe to express their opinion. Whether you agree with it or not, that does not matter. The fact that we afford this opportunity is the key. And then all students have a capstone experience, and they can decide what they want to do. Oftentimes students want to do a year abroad, they want to do research, they want to volunteer in a local community that serves diverse populations. It really depends on what the student chooses. The important thing is that they take ownership of that year. They take ownership of what they're going to be doing as a capstone. Another thing that I didn't actually put up there, and I'll just kind of briefly mention. So one of the initiatives that we did also is is around food insecurity with students. So we're in the process of starting a food pantry on campus. Everything is pretty much set. We're just waiting on the final say-so from our legal team. So we're just waiting for that. But we're hoping to get notification of that soon. And then the last thing is the Just Ask hours. And this is actually really huge. I think with the exception of our the interactions that they have with our student success coaches, the student success coaches, we have every student is assigned to a student success coach, and they have a caseload of around 70 to 80 students, which is still large, but not too large that it's unmanageable. And so they're guaranteed those meetings with those coaches. But the other thing is the Just Ask hours. So faculty actually make themselves available in a specific area where students can just come in and ask questions. It doesn't have to be by appointment. It doesn't have to be during office hours. If the professor is there, they're welcome to come in and ask questions about class or an assignment or an exam that's coming up. And we find that is actually one of the most popular offerings that we have. So, like I said, I may not have all the answers, so I put my contact information up there just in case. But does anyone have any questions? Oh. Yes.
I might have missed this, but did you say that the Just Ask hours are all faculty at the same time, or is it, like, can you say a little bit more about that?
Sure. It's not all faculty at the same time. That would be
really hard to do.
Unfortunately, as you all probably know, space is a huge contentious issue at times. It's a huge issue on campuses, and UMR is not immune to that. We do have a space issue, but no, we have some faculty that come in and set their times. It's like a traditional office hours, but the important thing is that it's not in the professor's office.
Okay.
The important thing is that it's in a central location where students have access to those professors. They don't have to make an appointment. They don't have to walk across campus to get there. The professor actually comes to where the students are, and they're available and accessible, and students really love that.
Thanks.
Yes. Oh.
I had a question about the IDI. If
Sure.
students are taking that 3 times throughout their education, how are you infusing that into conversations either with their advisors or faculty, or are those like one-time conversations every time
Sure.
they take it?
That is a great question. So as I mentioned, we have 30 plus qualified administrators on our campus. And so every student that takes the IDI the first time meets with a qualified administrator, and they do a debrief. And so you talk about the results, you talk about any future plans, you talk about kind of how to structure intercultural competency learning, and opportunities that there are in the community or on campus that may aid in that progression.
Can you talk a little bit more about the campus climate survey and how often it's been administered, if you know?
Sure. I believe the first time was in 2016. No, 2015. I think it's every 2 years, and we are coming up to analyzing the 2016 or finalizing the 2016 data, and I think we're about to start the process for the new campus climate. So it's every 2 years, and we've done it twice, I believe. Yes.
Ramiro, is your faculty staff diversity?
Oh.
Yes. Yes, I wanted to inquire about your faculty staff diversity representation.
I think from what I'm hearing, I think we are not immune again to that same issue, that we do not have faculty and staff that are representative of our students. I believe we're close, but not there yet. If I'm not mistaken, it's about 20% of our faculty and staff are people of color, and I think 31.7% I believe is student of color. So there's still a gap there, but we're getting close. And I think the way we use data as we move forward, and UMR is going to be, I believe, expanding as the years progress. And so I think we want to continue to be intentional about how that growth happens and not just admit students for the sake of admitting them, but also being able to have the faculty and staff that are representative of our student population, but then also that can provide that support so that we can continue to see the high numbers of persistence and retention, can see the high numbers of graduation with 4 years or less, and then also the employment opportunities as well.
Can I ask about the IDI?
Sure.
Do you just have the students take it, or also faculty and staff?
We've had faculty and staff take it. I took it as a new employee, and then as a qualified administrator, we did the training. And so I've actually taken the IDI several times prior to starting at UMR. So I was familiar with it, but I believe the faculty and staff also take it.
And can you tell us a little bit about the experience of the faculty and staff of having taken it and use it? For their own sort of intercultural competency development, and
sure.
How is that going?
I don't necessarily have that answer, so I don't want to overstate. I believe that from my interactions with faculties, I work very closely with staff, obviously, because I'm a staff member, but in my interactions with faculty, I think they really take into account the fact that we promote and encourage and support diversity and inclusion across campus, and so they infuse that into their curriculum from what I've seen. And so every time we have an event on campus, for example, they always announce it in their class and encourage students to attend. I've had faculty actually walk students to an event and sit in with them. I wish everyone here had an opportunity to come and see the culture at UMR, because that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about building that culture of community support, of inclusiveness and diversity, and just seeing students. It's actually kind of fascinating and exhilarating to me walking down our lounge and seeing all the whiteboards with stuff on it that I hardly understand. And so it's really interesting for me to see how students interact with each other and how faculty are available. And faculty member would be walking by and a student would just pull them in and say, hey, is this correct? And it's just a different culture that I've seen at other institutions. Yes.
So is the IDI part of the onboarding process then for staff?
I'm not sure if it's part of the onboarding. I know that they've done it in the past for all faculty and staff. I know that as a qualified, or they wanted me to be a qualified administrator, I had to take it again, even though I had taken it in the past. But I think that was part of the training for being a QA. But it is part of the onboarding for students, so it's part of orientation and all that. All right, thank you.
I have to say I've participated in some search committees with UMR, and I can attest to the very different culture, the really collaborative, and a lot of co-teaching models too being practiced, and you can feel it in the space and the interactions with different members of UMR. So our final presentation here is by Ronald Huesman. He's the interim director of the Office for Institutional Research, and I am just also giving just a heads up that in terms of time, we may have just 10 minutes, and then we hope to ask at least one question to all of you, so maybe we'll find some time with that. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I'll try to make this brief, and it's try to make data exciting too, because this is going to be a little different presentation than the previous ones. institutional research is responsible for reporting the official data of the institution, not only for our internal people, but for the outside world as well. And so we have definitions we have to follow and rules that we follow, and I was hoping to kind of show you what's available publicly and talk a little bit about what we have also in our data warehouses. And so I'll just get started. Lorna, I just really need to make a quick comment. Growing up in Northwest Minnesota, that dirt picture really made me homesick. So, okay, so I'll try to stay focused. So in the data warehouse, we collect a lot of information about students and our faculty and staff. Primarily gender and race and ethnicity are kind of the ones that we know the most about, and we report publicly as well as internally. But there's also other categories: veteran status, first generation, Pell eligible, we use as a proxy for socioeconomic status, and citizenship status. We have to follow a lot of rules and regulations around data privacy, so what we can report publicly, we are constrained a bit what we can do. We don't want people to be identified by this information, so we aggregate data into tables, and we just have rules of cell sizes less than 5 don't get shown unless you're an internal need for it. So there's different ways to get the data. Our website is one of the primary ways the public can access information about our student body and our faculty and staff. You can also come to our office and we can do consultation with groups that are interested in doing more detailed research. We get a lot of ad hoc requests as well, and again we have to abide by FERPA and data privacy standards. And we do consult, so just make that. Our website is really our public face of the university. It shows the system-wide data. It shows all the different campuses data for Rochester and Morris and Duluth. We also have been revising the website, so if you haven't visited it for a while, there's a lot of Tableau reports, a lot of data visualization that can be done with the data to make it more functional and useful. And one of the primary purposes for our website is to reduce those ad hoc requests. So, okay. When you land on the page, you'll see different areas. Focus around student data, human resource data, tuition and finance data, surveys and assessment. That's where you'll find results from the CERU survey, which is done on the Twin Cities campus, and then planning metrics for accountability. So I'm going to just take you through some examples of what you might see when you go on the website, some reports around student enrollment for race ethnicity. And I think a really important discussion, and one that will be followed up in the next panel, is data definitions and how they really matter in terms of what we see and what we think our population looks like. So I'm going to look at 2 different definitions that we have on our website. One is a University of Minnesota definition for race and ethnicity, and the second is one that we have to report to the federal government and how that changes the distributions. So, and then just some information about the gender distributions, which we saw in the Rochester slide. You can see how that is not an unfamiliar finding, why I shook my head as well. So when you get to the website and you go into the students section, you look at the fall enrollment report, you're going to see all these numbers. And this first one is really just the fall of 2018 at the second week, how many students we had, and by different dimensions and categories. This report starts with the whole system, so all the campuses are here, all the colleges are represented, and all the student levels, so graduate, professional, undergrad, non-degree seeking students. And the dimension that we're breaking this report out by is race and ethnicity. There's a whole number of other dimensions you can break the report out by here. One of the nice things about these Tableau reports is you can download this table, and you can download it into a crosstab, you could download it into PDF if you wanted to. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but if you download it into a crosstab, it goes into an Excel sheet though. And from there you can start to manipulate it and start graphing it and doing some other things and summarizing it. And I have some examples of that. But for overall, all the students we have on campus, you can see, it's hard to see with the chair in the way down there at the very bottom, but there are 66,888 students in the system. So we are a fairly large campus and a very large higher ed system. Okay. Oops. Okay. Now this is the same report but using the IPEDS definitions for race and ethnicity. And I circled the category that shows up now, and it's called the multiracial category. And that's 2 or more races. If a student reports more than 1 race ethnicity on the application, they can put into this category for IPEDS. We don't do that for the U of M definition. That does change the distribution slightly. And there's rules in place. For IPEDS, if a student selects Hispanic, that's going to trump all the other possible race ethnicities they choose later on. So they get reported as Hispanic. If they chose American Indian and white, they're going to go into this 2 or more bucket. So that's going to change those distributions on Native American. You'll see these in the graphs coming up. Okay. So what I've done here for fall of 2018 for the entire U of M system is show the distributions of race ethnicity for the 2 definitions side by side. And what you can see here is for Native American, instead of a 2% representation, it goes down to 0.6% using the federal definition. The proportion of Asians also goes down, as well as African American Black. Hawaiian is a very small number. Hispanic actually goes up because it's favored in that Trump rule a little bit. The number of white students remains virtually unchanged proportion-wise, and as well as international, around 10%, about the same. And as you can see with the multiple racial category, we count about 3.6% of our students in that group. This is just another way to look at the data. This is race ethnicity across the entire U of M system, across all student types again. And you can just see for the last 5 years what the distributions have looked like. Native American across the board is pretty consistent, around 2%. Asian has been climbing a little bit from 7.7% to 9.1%. African Americans up about 1% over the last 5 years. Hispanic about 1% as well. The proportion of white students going down slightly, around almost 4%. International students have been fairly stable, but we're starting to see a slight decline there in this fall. And then we have a fairly large proportion of unknown as well. And they often show up in the colleges like continuing ed or non-degree programs where it's not collected as systematically. Just as same kind of cut, but just for the Twin Cities. Again, comparing the 2 different definitions, you'll see a very similar story here in terms of changes in the proportions, particularly among Native American again, and Asian and Black, and a slight increase in Hispanic. Okay. And this is a historical trend for the Twin Cities, and again, a similar pattern as for the system. And then just finally, you can break this out by gender, male and female. You can see this is fall of 2018. And for that group, we're at 30,838 males overall and 35,179 females across the system. So that's about 46% male and 52% female. And I did graph these as well because you can download them. And I just wanted to kind of give you a quick overview of this as well. So back in the fall of 2014 for the entire system, the proportions of male and female there were still slightly more females. And what's happened over time is that discrepancy has gotten larger, and now it's instead of about 2.4% difference, it's about a 6.5% difference. And if you look at undergraduates across the system, it's a fairly similar story. In the fall of 2014, it was virtually 50-50, and now it's about a 4.5% difference. In the Twin Cities, again, a similar story. Slight difference in fall of 2014, and the discrepancy's gotten larger. It's about 7.6% difference now. And for undergraduates, it was pretty close to a 50-50 split about 5 years ago, and now it's about a 6% difference. So these trends are not just here, they're going across the nation as well. So this is just a report of HR, just to give you an idea. Again, you can look at the head counts of faculty, staff, professional categories, administrative, graduate students as well, our grad assistants, professionals in training, which are our medical residents. And you can download this data and you can manipulate it as well. For faculty that are employees of color, so anyone that's not white or unknown, the proportions have gone from about 17% to 18.5% across the system in the last 5 years. So you can calculate these differences yourself as well. Okay. So, and I just briefly mentioned, and my colleagues in the Office of Institutional Research later this afternoon will be talking about campus climate results from our surveys. One of the things I'll mention here is the surveys are an opportunity for us to measure different demographics and subgroups that we can't measure with our system data. So we can get information about sexual orientation, minorities, gender identity, recent immigrants, which is a really important group for our campus. We have a lot of large proportion of our students are for first generation or second generation. Disability status, as well as religious affiliation. So those are just some examples of what we can pull from the surveys, tie it back to systems data or to other parts of the survey and look at outcomes by campus climate or engagement, things of that nature. So with that, I will say thank you. Okay. Thank you. Okay. All right.
Any questions for Ron? Asked first.
For the international students, how do you define international student versus somebody who's recently immigrated to the United States? And is their race not taken into account in the other factors?
When we do these kind of reports, the race is not part of the calculation for international, and we are working on being able to capture that better. So yeah, the government really doesn't care where those students are, what their race ethnicity is. They just want to know they're here temporarily. So they're on a visa, student visa status. They're non-residents. They'll be here temporarily. Yep. The recent immigrants that are U.S. citizens, we really don't know that through central data that we have here on campus. We have to get that through a survey. So. Yes.
How does the U mark when they select more than one ethnicity? If federal puts it into multi, I mean, I'm sure the U doesn't want to double count. So how do you do that?
So if that's a great question, and for the last almost 20 years, and Amy in the next panel will talk more about this as well, but we choose a primary race ethnicity for somebody. So if they choose more than one, for the last 20 years, this is the way it's been done, is that we pick the least representative category that they've selected, and that's what they get counted as. So, yep. Yep. We don't have any Trump rules like we do for iPads, so it's, yeah. And I meant like Trump, like in cards, not our presidents, so, yes. Yeah, okay. Okay.
Hey, Ron?
Yes.
Question. So the state data you have, not the survey data, but that's based, as I recall, on what students put in on their application.
Yes. Yeah.
And to what extent do students change their profile once they're here? Do we encourage them to change their profile? Because we know that a lot of students choose not to declare because they're not sure what impact it might have on admission.
Yeah. I really don't know the proportions, Scott, that change. Amy might have a better understanding of that, but you can change it. You can. It's a directory. You can update it, and I know students do that, and they do that with gender as well. So it's not like we take snapshots after 10 days into the semester, year after year, and that's kind of when we pick our point in time. So yeah. And if I picked it, 2 days later, the number would be slightly different. So yeah.
Question?
Yes.
Could you speak to why or the reasoning behind the Trump rule of once you've selected Hispanic, you're immediately, that's it?
I don't know. I think it's lost in time in my mind. It's been that way for a long, long time. Yeah. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ronald, I would just say, I
Yep.
have a question. You had me a little concerned over here.
Yep. Yes.
Hello. Okay. You had me a little concerned over here. I had to ask Melissa, what does he mean by Trump?
Yeah. So I'm glad I explained that.
So I guess that's a term that you use in the business for.
Yeah.
Okay.
It probably is an unfortunate choice of a term, but There is a ranking table that the university has that decides, when a student, where they're going to be placed for reporting purposes. So, yep.
Ron, we have an online question.
Yes.
And it is, how do you prepare for student population that is becoming more mixed, like the primary is equal between two different race ethnicity?
That's a really great question. And I really don't know. I think we're going to be discussing this as a campus, as how we define race, ethnicity further, and gender as well, gender identity. Those discussions are ongoing. Our enterprise data management group has been leading that effort. I did verify with Amy prior to this that those proportions are still in the same order as they were 20 years ago. They haven't changed. So, yeah. Yep.
Is there an attempt to contact the student to inquire before the determination is made?
No.
Because I'm thinking for students from underrepresented populations, that may affect their opportunity for maybe specialty scholarships or something. Maybe down the road it might have an impact.
No, and I think how that data gets used, it gets used in a lot of different ways. What I'm talking about is how we're reporting this externally to the world. That data is still there. All those different categories they chose are still in the data warehouse, and they get manipulated in different ways too. So there's, as Amy will discuss too, there's like 5 different official definitions for race ethnicity on campus, depending on how you're using the data. So I think that's an important distinction to make. The purpose that we were using this information for is to report externally. And for iPads, we have to put someone into a category. So we're kind of stuck in that sense. And it's even worse with gender. The government only allows male, female. And we can't have any unknowns. So there's things like that we are dealt, the cards we're dealt with. If I'll go back to my card analogies, I shall try it. Yep. Yep. Okay. Yep. Yep, I will do that. Thank you.
I think we need to work at a federal level to change those categories, but I'm not hopeful right now. I'm going to just ask one question, and maybe the rest will come from the audience. First thing, thank you for all these presentations. I find this is really helpful for us to understand what's happening across the system. I think it's the first time we've done this in the context of data. And what strikes me is that each campus, each system campus, has different strengths and different challenges. And so there is this possibility for all of us to learn from each other. And so I guess that's my first question, that what does each campus think that you have, that's your strength, that you might want others to learn from you? And then what might you want to learn from others? I think they're still thinking. No.
Is this on? Okay. Hello? All right. All right. Well, I think for me, compared to you, I've been here 19 years, and I still don't know everything. So I think there's always something you'll learn new here every day. One of the things I really appreciate about the Twin Cities campus, though, is the community efforts, the town halls, so to speak, where we've gotten together as a large community and discussed these issues together. And what I've seen grow out of that, these types of events and all the different initiatives with International Student Support Services, all the diversity initiatives, it's been great to see action taken. Because I think once you start having conversations, you do start to break down the barriers and misunderstandings, and I know with a large institution like this, it's like turning the Titanic. Sometimes it's a large ship that needs, but once you get it moving, that momentum, the physics behind it, it really takes off. So that's one of the things I really appreciated.
So I think one of the strengths that we have at the Morris campus is that we're small and we're committed. And so I'm thinking right now about an initiative in place right now, which is
they're equity and diversity advocates that we're placing on each of our shared governance committees. And they are receiving training in order to be able to provide different perspectives while we're having discussions related to the running of our institution. And that's an example of a group of people questioning whether or not we are considering these different perspectives and working to implement that on our campus. And so I think that's a good example of the things that we do well. In terms of where I'd like to learn, I think I mentioned it earlier, we have a sense of what the climate is on campus, but I think we need a better sense, especially for, alluding to the question earlier, especially for students as they interact with our community beyond our University of Minnesota Morris gates. And not necessarily that we can make change quickly, but having more information will only benefit us.
For the Crookston campus, I would say that we are a welcoming and inclusive campus environment. We have wonderful student diversity representation on our campus. Our motto is small campus, big degree. And so we too are very collaborative. We work across departments, across units, and reach into our community to serve our students and to ensure that their needs are met socially, academically, personally. A lot of services available on our campus. I did want to mention at the end of my presentation, I forgot to say that while I was focusing on Latinx students, the focus is on Latinx students right now, that process that I followed with that subcommittee is a wonderful model, and we're already looking at other groups. So we're looking at LGBTQIA, we're looking at our veterans, we are looking at various other socioeconomic rural student populations. So we're looking at other populations. As far as what to be learned, for myself personally, I would like to increase my data literacy. And I just wanted to tell you, I found your presentation very interesting, and I did not feel intimidated. So thank you for that. And you'll probably get some calls from Crookston asking and looking for data.
Success, more work.
There you go, job security there, Ronald. So it definitely also to build those relationships with the other campuses, to reach out, to learn more about what's being done, what the resources are, how we can connect, possibly connect our students to expand their experiences.
For the Rochester campus, I think we have a lot of strengths, and I think being a young campus, we're doing a lot at this point. Our strengths are, I think, and you kind of took it from me, but we are a very committed staff and faculty group, and we are committed to diversity and inclusion, but also creating that community feel and a sense of belonging for our students. I think another strength is that we have 2 majors. The fact that we're small and nimble and we can make changes very quickly and that are long-lasting. Another strength is our strategic partnerships with Mayo and the Rochester Diversity Council and some of the other folks in the community. Some of our challenges, I believe, is bringing some of those folks on campus, working with diverse communities and bringing them to campus, because space is a challenge at UMR, unfortunately. It's great in the sense that we have a very close proximity to Mayo. I mean, they're literally across the street, but the proximity sometimes doesn't really lend to bringing some of those folks on campus, although the Mayo is very, it almost feels like it's integrated to the things that we do. We have a lot of panelists and workshops and things that are hosted by Mayo on our campus, but I'm talking about the broader Rochester community, that we're just not able to house them. But I think in general we have a lot of strengths and again a lot of areas to improve.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I'm going to wrap it up right here. Please join me in thanking the group. we've already cut into our break, so I'm going to invite you to take a 10-minute break, and we'll start after that. There's two things. One, there's some refreshments that will be in the annex. And then the second is there's a post-it wall created there. So if each of you could just add one thought from the first panel, that would be great. Thank you.